Hello, my name is Sophia Botha, and welcome to the latest edition of Botha Rants, where we react to the latest political and LGBTQ news of interest, or at least interest to me. And today, well, there's only really one story, of course, the budget. Now, a couple of points. First of all, I know there's going to be a lot of lefties who are going, oh god, the budget, economics, boring. Well, I hate to tell you this, but economics is actually quite vital. Basically, everything is to do with economics, as everything is political. And if lefties bothered to check, they'd find out that most of Karl Marx's work was analysis of economics. And he got many things right in his analysis, actually. It's basically, the study of economics isn't like, Uber, basically an excuse for capitalism. It's not like, oh, capitalism good, no, it's, it could be the study of how any economy works, whether it be socialist or capitalist, or a mixture of both, which is probably the best solution, a mixed economy, if you ask me. Also, the other criticism I have had, actually, from some trans friends is why it is I don't just concentrate on trans issues. Well, the first thing to say to that is I should have been an economist. That was my academic field of my specialist academic field, and I didn't work out that I ever worked as an economist, and it's sad that never happened. And well, but as for just shouting for trans rights, no, trans rights are important to me. Obviously, I am trans, and they are close to my heart. But I am more than just trans, okay? And so there are many things, I always like to say I'm intersectional, right? In other words, I realise that, trans rights aren't the only thing which affects my life, and affects the lives of other trans people as well. And so that's one reason. The other reason is I'm kind of the political dolly mixture. In other words, I just don't want to shout for one thing. I'd find that personally restrictive and boring. I don't like putting a straitjacket on myself too much. That's just me, I'm far too scattergun for that kind of, for doing that. However, I'm always prepared to spread the love here. This is Essence of Thought, and it's one of the best trans rights channels on YouTube, if you ask me. Ethel, and I forgot what her their co-host is called. Forgive me. But they do a show. I think it's once a week, and basically go through a lot of stuff to do with trans issues, and they're doing it in a very analytical and thoughtful way. And if you want that, you want pure trans rights, well then check out this channel, okay? The thing is, actually, a lot of trans people I know actually don't like YouTube, funny enough. But anyways, but if they do want to check out a YouTube channel which is as pure to do with trans issues, then check out this channel. Meantime, I'm going to talk about the budget, which of course happened today. And well, I was actually surprised how there wasn't any real great surprises in it. I was actually expecting, because Sunak kept saying, I have to be honest with you about the public finances, and I thought, well, that would be code for cuts. Because borrowing is at an all-time high for peacetime, understandably. And so I thought he would be already sort of possibly looking forward to implementing cuts to public services and whatever else in the future when the COVID-19 pandemic is over, is all the COVID pandemic bullshit is basically ended. Sorry, I have to admit, I'm still not at my best today. From side effects of the vaccine. I spent most of this afternoon in bed, funny enough, and I only pulled this show together in the last hour. It's not I'm lazy. It's just I haven't been feeling well. It's understandable. I was told that that this might be the case. Anyways, I know people just making excuses, blah, 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 blah. But do you want to swap bodies with me, okay? All right? And then you can feel like how I feel at the moment, all right? I mean, I should be back to full fitness tomorrow. And tomorrow, me and Osmo will be doing a show catching up with all the stories I was going to do yesterday because I had to cut things short because I wasn't feeling well. Anyways, back to the budget. All right, okay, because that's the big story of the day. I mean, obviously, there's some stuff from up north with the SNP I might cover if I feel up to it. Anyways, so first of all, the OBS, right, reckon that the economy is going to grow by 7.3% next year. No. That's over optimistic. Okay, to give you to basically lay it on the line to you. Okay, Rishi Sunak was honest enough to say that in 5 years' time, the British economy will still not be back to the size it was pre the COVID-19 pandemic. But what he didn't say is that even pre the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy was still not as healthy as it was prior to the financial crisis of 2008. Yeah, that's what people forget. The economy was larger back then than it was in 2019, right? So, and I don't think growth is going to bounce back as much as, they're forecasting, simply because people are going to be a lot more cautious. Okay? It's easier to get into a recession than it is to get out, right? And you don't, basically, when this pandemic started hitting this country, you basically heard of a V-shaped recession. So, drastically, the economy would shrink and then would bounce back, like a V-shape. No. I'll tell you why. For one reason, we keep hearing about different strains of COVID. The latest is the Brazilian strain of COVID. Now, as it goes, so far, the vaccine is meant to be effective against all these different variants of COVID. Thank goodness. But you never know, and that's the problem. I just think. Also, I think there's going to be a lot of businesses which aren't going to reopen. Simple as that. I'm sure there will be some growth, but I just think the forecast is just being way too fucking over optimistic in regards to the bounce back of the economy. This is the biggest shrinkage in the British economy in 300 years, as it says here, 1709. Can't remember what happened then, but And even though Rishi Sunak didn't really lay it on the line about there being cuts in public services today, there will be spending cuts. Believe me, this is a Tory government. It will happen when there is growth in the economy, and it's going to happen. And knowing the Tories, well, disabled people know very well about how the Tories pay for economic fuck ups. Because disabled people were made to pay for the mistakes of bankers, during the last decade. I mean, the thing is, people say how callous the Tories are, allowing, was it 120,000 people die of COVID, which is tens of thousands more than needed to have died of due to COVID. Well, the Tories have killed over 120,000 disabled people via their welfare reform program. So why should that really be any fucking surprise to anyone? You see, the thing is, as well as being trans, I'm also disabled, and I know full well the kind of shit disabled people have been through in the last decade. And believe me, I actually remember there was a Tory troll who used to stalk me. Terry the Tory troll. And I remember when, the Tories basically started implementing welfare reform. And I know some on the right are going to say, yeah, but Labour had plans to implement welfare reform if they'd won the 2010 general election. Yes, but Labour had also plans to support disabled people into work, right? The Tories, right, they just implemented the stick, not the carrot. Okay, the Tories were just interested in punishing poor and vulnerable people, essentially. Not actually helping them have a better life. That's the difference. And I actually remember there was a Tory who said, "Oh, collateral damage. So what?" Yeah, that was Terry the Tory troll. And I mean, actually, I should talk about Terry the Tory troll for a minute. I've been meaning to do so. While I brought him up, so yeah, Terry the Tory troll. Basically, I used to write for a blog called The Bastard, and I really wish I had never actually ever written for it, but to be perfectly honest. Because the person who ran that blog was an anti-Semitic piece of shit. Always trying to make excuses. I think back then, and I know some people say, "Fuck me, so if you're Jewish, why would you, write for, a blog run by an anti-Semitic piece of shit?" Well, here's the thing. Back then, I didn't think I was worth much. I thought I was shit, right? And that's how it happens. Okay, and plus also I just and I didn't think I had any other options to basically get a cathartic release. That's basically, a lot. I'll admit a lot of my political writing was just a cathartic release from I needed to have a rant about shit to basically get stuff out of my system, right? And I had that platform to do it, so and it helped me. When it came to my personal life, I wasn't as angry. You're talking about the days before I transitioned. So I was all full of testosterone, and testosterone, let me just tell you, rotted my fucking brain. Well, poisoned my brain, shall we say, and made me an awful fucking person as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so there was this one guy who had some dealings with through some mutual acquaintance, and he started basically stalking me. He would always turn up, because I didn't just write for The Bastard. I did end up writing for other blogs, and particularly in the United States, and he would always find out where I was, and basically start comment, always like revealing personal stuff about myself. I don't know why, but I had. How do I say this? I told him some. I had some. As I said, I had some dealings through a mutual acquaintance, and we'd got to know each other a little bit. And I think he knew some stuff about me, and so he would reveal sort of personal stuff. But what happened then was when I transitioned, I still wrote for this stupid fucking blog, The Bastard, and I mean, the thing is, do you remember I when I told you about the, trans and anti-Semitism, I mentioned a person called Susie, and this is who the person who ran this blog was. Now, when I transitioned, right, Terry would turn up and detonate me on purpose, and Susie would allow it. I mean, this is why I actually quit writing. And he would, divulge personal details about myself. I mean, the thing is, it was like, why are you doing this to me? And he would say it was because you go at, various politicians. And I was going, well, who are they to fucking you? They're not, that's, I'm not having a go at Terry, but I mean, anyways, I mean, this guy was in his like 60s. He was a really sad git. I mean, his real name was Terence Godfrey, and he lives in Boston. I don't know, I would imagine by now he'd be in his late 70s. He's probably still watching me, and I know that he has tried to follow me on Twitter, even in the last couple of years, and I always spot him. He has different accounts and tries to, and I always manage to block him. But he, I just thought, how fucking sad do you have to be, to basically, hound somebody who really doesn't have much fucking influence, and I just think it's really fucking sad. And of course the guy was a Tory, and he did say, and I do remember him saying, and it was very, very callous about disabled people. It was like, oh well, collateral damage for the economic fuck ups. Well, disabled people didn't fucking fuck up the fucking world economy. It was a bunch of bankers, and and can I just point out, when I say bankers, I don't mean Jews, okay? When you hear a lot of people say that, right? People like Alex Jones and whoever else, they do generally mean Jews. No, in my case, I'm talking about the large, the banks, people in Armani suits who basically fuck up the world economy at the drop of a fucking dime. I mean, they're all fucking each other over for a fucking percentage. And you don't have, and it's got nothing to do with being Jewish. It's just got to do with being greedy, right? Greed, the Gordon Geckos of the fucking world. Greed is good. No, greed is not good. It fucks over the most vulnerable and poorest in society, and deprives them of opportunities. We could do so much more. This is why I've always said, fuck Margaret Thatcher being the greatest fucking prime minister of this country. It was Clement fucking Attlee, because what the Attlee government put in place, millions benefited from and had a better life because of it, right? And Thatcher took that fucking away. Okay? Yeah. Anyways, so Terry the Troll, just somebody who just pestered me for years on end. I mean, the last time he tried to contact me directly, I told him that if he ever tried to contact me again, I'd call the police, because I'd been dropping hints like, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone, and I mean, I tried to appease, I made the mistake of trying to appease them, but no, they just were even more of an arsehole. I mean, he told me, I need to be taught, he told me, you need to be taught a lesson. You need to be taught, what you say is dangerous. No. It's no more dangerous than what Owen Jones says. You know, why do you go and pester him? Oh, that's right, because Owen Jones would just fucking ignore you as you should be ignored, which is what I now do with trolls. Now, I learnt the hard way with trolls. Just fucking ignore them. Anyways, back to the budget. Sorry, I needed to get that out of my system. As I said, sometimes me ranting, it's a cathartic fucking release. Hi, Ozma. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat, folks. Yeah. The UK strain of COVID, also known as J.K. Rowling. Yeah. Well, we'll be covering J.K. Rowling tomorrow when you're on the show. There is a story, which we were going to cover last night. Anyways, so basically, I just think it's over optimistic. Funny enough, I did see the long-term forecast, and they did say that growth would then slump back down to about 1.5% in the forthcoming years after next year. I actually just think that growth will be really sluggish. Period. Because as I said, I don't think people will be very cautious, and there won't be much confidence. Seriously, I just think that COVID-19 will cast a long shadow. Now, I know some people say, what about the Roaring Twenties? And what they mean by this is obviously it's a reference to the Spanish flu, which, the last great global, well, I mean, sort of, it was, I guess it was the last global pandemic to really affect the globe. I mean, there have been pandemics since, but hasn't affected society as much I mean, the funny thing about the Spanish flu, right, is when I was at school, right, I never got taught about it in history lessons. It was actually, it was like Spanish flu was like written out of fucking, the Spanish flu pandemic of, was it 2018? Sorry, not 2000, 1918 and 1919 was written out of history, basically. Basically, because of the First World War, 1914 to 1918, and then the Spanish flu, the 20s were the Roaring Twenties. Well, we all know how the 20s ended, don't we? Yeah, it's the Wall Street crash. I don't know. I kind of feel that things are a lot different now, and that I can understand that people will definitely want to party when all this COVID-19 pandemic bullshit is over. And I don't blame people for wanting to party. I get it. I perfectly get it. But I just don't think generally the economy is going to bounce back as much as, Rishi Sunak reckons it will do. Now, they've extended the furlough scheme, which of course is where the government has stepped in and paid 80% of people's wages. They've extended it until September, haven't they? Yeah, that was a good announcement. I do agree with doing that. Though, as it says here, employees will continue to receive 80% of their wages until the scheme ends, but firms will be asked to contribute 10% in July and 20% in August and September. Well, that's all very well saying that, but what if firms can't afford, because they've got no business coming? Because, okay, we hope to be out of lockdown by June, right? That is the hope. Right, that is the hope, and I honestly, I hope personally that it is, because I'm sick and tired of sitting inside, and just like everyone else, I'm not, you can tell spring is on its way, and for me personally, having to self-shield until the end of the month is it's horrible. You want to get out in the sunshine. But even then, will firms be having enough income coming in? Let's hope they do. But as I said, we'll wait. It's kind of wait and see, isn't it? He also, for the Sunak, also confirms that self-employed income support scheme has also been extended. Good. The fourth grant will cover February to April, worth 80% of the average trading profits, up to $7.5 grand. Right. Okay. Here's the thing. Right. He also mentioned, and I don't know if it says it later in this article, that the government has said that there's fraud afoot with the furlough scheme. Right. Also, now the thing is, right. Sorry. Excuse me a minute. Scrap what I just said. Okay. Right. So the £20 a week increase in universal credit is extended for 6 months. Now, this is the interesting thing. Now, not all disabled people are on universal credit. No, not that one. Sorry, got that wrong. Rishi Sunak just deprived over 1 million disabled people of their basic rights. Now, this is from the Canary. We'll get to that article in a minute. Right. So, hold on. Sorry, wrong one. So, now I'm wondering here, right, whether there'll be unrest when the government decreases universal credit. Now, I can see that there being protests against that, right? I do. And as the Canary points out, he's deprived a lot of disabled people of their basic rights. As I say, not all disabled people are on universal credit, but many are. And universal credit has been a fucking disgrace. I mean, people having to go without fucking anything to live on for up to, what was it, 12, sometimes 16 weeks, sometimes longer. People fucking starving. Anyways, so let's have now, lucky enough with the Canary, I can actually give you I don't have to read it. I can play it.
Rishi Sunak just deprived over 1 million disabled people of their basic rights.
Rishi Sunak just showed his contempt for sick and disabled people, because his budget contained no extra support for countless numbers of them. And overall, Sunak may have deprived over 1 million sick and disabled people of some of their most basic needs. Sunak, £20 here, £20 there. The Chancellor confirmed in his budget on Wednesday the 3rd of March that the £20 uplift...
the £20 universal credit uplift should be permanent, and I'm telling you, when that comes to an end, the Tories will become very, very unpopular in certain quarters. But unless, of course, the Tories can blind sort of poor people with nationalistic jingoism, which has often happened. It's not the £20 decrease from your budget, which from your household budget, which is the problem. No, it's the immigrant. Yeah, that's the Tory plan, isn't it? Let's go on with this article.
To universal credit would stay. But as the Mirror pointed out, 6 million people face £20 a week cut. This is because Sunak has only put the £20 increase in place until September. As the Mirror noted, that means millions of Brits face a new cliff edge in autumn. It's understood the Chancellor expects the £20 a week to end in a...
I was trying to remember, but we'll get to Keir Starmer's response later, but one thing that Keir Starmer does mention, and to be fair to Keir Starmer, he did get some things right in his response to the budget. One thing that Starmer mentioned was there was nothing in this budget about social care, which is something which a lot of disabled people rely on. There was no mention about it whatsoever. Now, I know what Sunak and the Tories are going to say. Well, that's down to local councils and their spending plans. Well, yeah, but they rely upon, some funds from central government in regards, providing social care. And there has been a crisis in social care, which the Tories have just buried their heads in the sand about. Yeah? One way or another, disabled people are getting fucked. It's either decreases the fucking welfare, or it's lack of support for them to be able to live an ordinary fucking life. It's all round. So disabled people are getting fucked again. Yes. So. Now, business support. The Chancellor confirmed the $5 billion restart grant for businesses to help companies get going after the lockdown. All right. Why do I get the feeling that that's not enough? He says total direct cash support for businesses has reached 25 billion. I'm trying to find. Now here we are. 5% reduced rate of VAT will be extended until the end of September. This is for the hospitality industry, specifically. The hospitality industry has obviously the industry which has been hit the hardest. And it's funny how when sort of crises happen, you find out how important certain sections of the economy are. Now, personally, I wouldn't have a problem with Wetherspoons going out of business because I am sick and tired of walking past Wetherspoons pubs and getting fucking abused. Okay, I really don't understand people's love affair with the British pub because to me, pubs. Fuck yeah! People have this romantic notion about pubs, don't they? That it's they always have the picture of this quaint English pub in the country pub, which is selling interesting craft beers to patrons who are interesting characters. No, it's fucking not. It's Wetherspoons on a Friday night, packed full of fucking gammon. Who if you get even glance at will fucking glass you, right? And the fucking even when it's not like you can't get served in an hour and you basically you run the risk of getting physically fucking assaulted on a Friday night. The pubs are just full of arseholes, right? You always get that bloke who sits in the corner, he'll go on and on and on and on and on. I'm not an alcoholic. I know somebody who drinks far more than me. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't really care. Stop my problem. You know? And then of course you get the barstool bigots. You know, fuck immigrants taking all our jobs away. Yeah, it's the fucking immigrants with two fucking jobs who are paying for your green fucking beer tokens. Yeah, for you to piss your fucking life away. And then, of course, you get if it's not the barstool bigots, the armchair generals, the armchair fucking prime ministers. You know, if I was in charge, you know, fight, get rid of all the immigrants, you know, and all the fighting criminals have them up against the wall and shoot them, you know. Despite the fact that most of these fucking people are as dodgy as fucking shit as it goes, and you know, and then of course there's always that bloke who'll go, oh, it's bullshit, it's all bullshit, it's all bullshit, you know, and and what is it with fucking pubs? They're always brown. It's always brown. They're always dank and dark, miserable fucking places. It's always decorated in brown. Brown's the colour of shit. And the cushion covers, they're always like dark green and dark blue. Is that to cover up the fucking, piss and puke stains? Is that the optimum colour to do that? Fucking up pubs. I hate fucking pubs. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, we'll get to it, but alcohol duties be frozen. So the alkies are going to love that. With the shopping trolleys full of fucking special fucking brew. In fact, obviously, I know Sunak has done that too, because the alcohol, obviously, most people do drink responsibly, but we do know the fact that there's a sizable minority who don't and make it are a pain in the ass for the rest of us. I mean, if I get drunk, I do it like in my own home. I'll do it in a private space. Okay, yes, sometimes I get a bit merry in restaurants, but I don't make an arsehole of myself. Anyways, so Sunak announced a stamp duty holiday will be expected. As expected, stamp duty, yep. The Chancellor confirms mortgage guarantee to help first time. Right, here we go. Right, okay. This was actually, and Starmer mentions this was a policy under the Cameron government. This is not helpful, actually. Let me tell you why. It creates a housing bubble. It actually pushes up house prices. Do you think that's a good thing, for people who want to buy? Because not everyone will qualify for this, okay? And basically, when because the Tories have this fucking wet dream about, the property owning democracy, and they always go on about how people shouldn't be generation rent. Oh right, so those of us who are renting are inferior, are we? Is that it? We're second class fucking citizens now, are we? Fuck off. There are actually advantages to rent, believe it or not. For instance, my landlord is obliged to basically maintain my fucking flat. There are various problems with it. Apartment. Fuck off. I just think, basically, the Tories are always trying to bribe fucking yuppie fucking couples, aren't they? To vote Tory, with this whole, this is what Cameron did. Of course, Thatcher allowed people to buy their council flats, the council apartments, and council houses. I don't have a problem actually with people doing that. Funny enough. What I have a problem though was that councils, the revenue they raised from those sell-off the sell-off of council houses and apartments is that they weren't allowed to use that money to basically build more housing, and we now have a housing crisis in the sense that affordable housing is like gold dust. That is what we need. We don't need, more and more fucking estates full of yuppie couples. Okay, what we need is decent housing for the lowest in society, to give them a hand up so that they can then have a better life and contribute to society. That's what we fucking need, right? But the thing is, the Tories, and I remember this, Nick Clegg, when he decided, when the Liberal Democrats decided to get into government with the Tories for the kudos of being in government, because that's what because the liberal Democrats are, or the Liberal Party as they once were, hadn't been in fucking government for fucking ever, so they wanted the kudos of being in government. Anyways, when they were in, government, Nick Clegg has said that David Cameron refused to build more council housing because he was scared that they would turn. He wasn't keen on building new council housing because it would turn people into Labour voters. Yeah, they did it. Basically, the Tories have been against the building of affordable housing because they thought it might turn people into Labour voters. Thus, they did it for political reasons rather than actually what's in the national interest. So, spending. Well, yeah, it's astronomical. I don't deny it. Total COVID support package this year and next is 3.52 billion. The Chancellor says. Sunak says the response to the pandemic has been one of the largest and most sustained the country has ever seen. Yeah, he was claiming that the Tories, he was patting himself on the fucking back, and patting the Tories on, there's always Tory government colleagues on the back. We're doing a good job. Well, why is it then we have the deepest fucking recession of all the G7 countries? Huh? Yeah. Explain that one to me. And one of the highest death rates as well. From COVID. Sunak says that the budget deficit will be 3.55 billion this year, 17% of GDP, the highest in peacetime. Well, yeah. It's the thing is, right. I would say it's not whether the percentages. That's not the important part. The important part is it's sustainable. In other words, if you can afford to borrow, then borrow. Right? If it's to deal with an emergency. I'm not saying the thing is, right, conservatives always like to pretend that they're deficit hawks, but they're not, right? When they've got grand fucking plans, they don't mind ramping up the fucking deficit. In fact, Cameron made a big deal about how the last Labour government ramped up the deficit more than any other fucking government. When in fact, actually, Cameron and Osborne, that team, basically borrowed more than the Labour government had done in 13 fucking years. And the Labour government, shall I add, funded 2 fucking wars, Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, I didn't agree with Iraq, definitely. I did see some justification of going into Afghanistan, but not occupying the fucking place. Anyways, that's a subject for another day. But anyways, he says, without corrective action, borrowing would continue at a very high levels, leaving underlying debt rising indefinitely. Right, so that yet again is code. There were hints. I thought there would be definite plans to cut public spending in some ways, but that's a hint that public spending is going to get cut. Next year or the year after. Believe me, that's going to happen. Because of the actions he is taking, he says borrowing will fall. Blah blah blah. The national debt. Now, this is the overall debt this country has. the sum of every budget deficit, the total sum of every budget deficit will rise from 88.8% to 93.8%. Now, this is important. Is that sustainable? Well, but like this, Japan, I think, had in recent times been running a national debt of 200% of GDP. In other words, yeah, but Japan's economy is far larger and works slightly differently to ours. But again, that's a lot, and it probably is unsustainable in the long term. So we should look. I mean, one reason, particularly the GOP in America, the Republican Party, will want our deficit hawks, is the ideology of isolationism. Basically, they don't want to. They don't believe in interdependent world, interdependency. They believe, and also the one about if you owe money to various countries, then you are basically their lackeys. I get all that, but as I say, we live in an independent world anyways, no matter how much you would like to believe we don't. Sure, getting rid of getting rid of the overall debt wouldn't be a bad thing. But it's how you do it. I would say that raising taxes on the rich would be the answer, but of course this is a Tory government. Now, yes, he did raise tax in some respects, and we'll get to that. In November, the OBR estimated that that borrowing is only comparable to 2 world wars. Okay, right. Yet again, another hint that there's going to be spending cuts. Can I just remind the Tories, right, that after the Second World War, this country was basically bankrupt. But it wasn't just bankrupt. The infrastructure in this country had been completely smashed due to the Luftwaffe bombing it, right? And, yet despite that, the Attlee government founded the NHS, built the welfare state, got the economy growing as well. People forget that. And so, it's not good, but I would say one difference between here and the Second World War is we haven't had the Luftwaffe, basically bombing the shit out of the country, so we've still got the infrastructure. So the economy probably could, the economy will grow, somewhat. As I say, I don't think it's going to bounce back as much as they will. But I do think, we have more advantages than after the Second World War. Fixing the public finances. The Chancellor says that the government will take fair approach to fixing the public finances. As I said, fixing the public finances is code for spending cuts. All right. The government will not raise national insurance, income tax, or VAT. That's right. Let me tell you something about VAT. Right. Okay. The Tories. Right, it's the Tories' favourite tax, value-added tax. Right, it was the Tories who introduced it in 1973. Right, and every Tory government since has raised it. Now, technically, Labour have never raised it above the amount it was when they came into government. Okay, because I know that there was always Tories who said that. Oh, well, the Labour did raise it, yes, after they cut it, right? So basically this was during the financial crisis. To get people to spend, Alistair Darling announced that it was reduced from 17.5% to 15% for a year, right? It was part of a stimulus package, right? But they didn't raise it beyond that. However, George Osborne, when he became Chancellor, did raise it to 20%, right? And if you've noticed, just as Norman Lamont raised it from what was it before? It was 9. Was it? He raised it from 15% to 17.5%. That was it in 1991. I remember that because that was a surprise. And I remember I went to a shop and basically it was Argos. Okay, I'm trying to avoid to admit that I've ever been into Argos. I have been. Right, I was buying something in Argos because all the prices all the catalogues have been printed before, the actual rise in VAT. They had to put a way of working out how expensive things were going to be now that there was a rise in VAT up. That one caught people out, I remember. But also Geoffrey Howe, when he was Chancellor and in the Thatcher government, he put it up from, I think it was 8% to 15%. If I remember rightly. So it's always been, the Tories have always liked VAT. The thing is, though, VAT hits the poorest because it's to those who are wealthy, right? They can afford to pay a bit extra, but for the poorest, they can't. It's a poll tax essentially. Now, am I saying we should get rid of it? No, but just remember that it's always the Tories' favourite tax. Yes, the Tories did promise to not raise national insurance and income tax, the base rate of income tax. Well, I think if the economy doesn't bounce back as much as they want, they might actually be forced into raising one of those two. Personal corporation tax. Now, this is the tax which did go up, and basically, Sunak today adopted a policy proposed by John McDonnell, who was the Shadow Chancellor when Jeremy Corbyn was the leader of the Labour Party. The rate of corporation tax will increase to 25%, Sunak says. This will be the lowest rate in the G7. It's still not going to be as high as it is in the United States. Funny enough, actually, Joe Biden wants to raise a corporation tax in the United States. Sunak says businesses will only be impacted if they are making profits, and the change will only come in once the OBR forecast the economy will be recovering. The rates will be tapered to that, so that only businesses with profits of more than 250,000 will be taxed at the full 25% rate. That means only 10% of companies will pay the higher rate. Companies with profits of less than 50,000 will remain at 19%. Yeah, that on the face of it, that seems fair, if you ask me. I mean, small businesses obviously have been hit the hardest. But the one thing I was wondering is why it is that he didn't go for a windfall tax on the supermarkets and on the likes of Amazon, who have done quite nicely out of the pandemic. Yeah, everyone else might be fucking miserable, but fucking Amazon and fucking Tesco's have been raking it in, So, and I mean, sure, no Tory government likes raising taxes, but other than VAT, because that always hits the poorest. I mean, obviously, probably more likely forced into it. So duties, alcohol duty will be frozen for a second year in a row. Actually, the one thing, and field duty will also be frozen. Here's the thing. I didn't hear how much the price of a pack of cigarettes is going up by. You always hear that at the budget. We didn't hear that. Yes, low carbon investment. Yeah. Leveling up. Oh yeah. Right. So. Basically, Sunak was sort of like giddy with excitement in his announcing green investment in green technology. Basically, the National Infrastructure Bank will open in Leeds. Hold on. I'm just trying to think here. Didn't the coalition government? I'm sure there was some sort of green bank, wasn't there? Which was meant to help invest in eco technology, and basically, as soon as the coalition government ended, it was scrapped. If I remembering right, and oh no, it was sold off. That was it. And so, well, this is just yet again like the more helping first time buyers. This is yet another policy nicked from the fucking coalition government. I mean, it's like the Tories don't have any original fucking ideas. Seriously. So. Oh yeah, leveling up. Leveling up. Right, this is the Tories, right? This is the favourite economic buzzword of the Tories. Well, our free ports are going to be as well. Yeah, we'll get to that. Chancellor confirms the Treasury will establish economic campus in Darlington. Yeah, basically to help churn out, the conformist capitalists of tomorrow. Because I don't know if you remember, but when was it, last year or was it the year before? Basically, the Tories trying to outlaw anti-capitalist literature being taught in schools and universities. So economic campus. So here's the thing: you get two varieties of economics in academia, right? You get theoretical economics, right? It's people such as myself, right? And then you get business schools, which basically teach you bean counting, okay? And which kind of economic campus do you think is going to be in Darlington? Yeah, it'll be the bean counting type. Yeah, it'll be churning out the conformist capitalists of tomorrow. Alongside businesses, international trade and housing, and communities departments, among others. Sunak announces more than $1 billion funding for 45 new town deals across the UK. I don't quite know what that's about, but I guess it's basically creating new towns. And now, basically, free ports. Free ports. The free port special economic zones with different rules to make it easier and cheaper to do business. You know what this reminds me of? Thatcher and the enterprise zones. Told you, the Tories don't have any fucking new ideas. They've done this one before, back in the 80s with the enterprise zones. Yeah. Now, the reason they're calling free ports is because all these places are going to be near the seaside. Now, I did see this on the BBC. how this is going to affect you. Paying of the wages of those on furlough, yep. Jabs and jobs, money promised for vaccine rollout does not directly affect the amount of money that is given into the pockets of individuals, but the extra 1.65 billion to help vaccinate every adult by the end of July should mean people can get back to work and the economy can start to recover. Basically, by the way, when I was watching Politics Live as coverage of the budget, the Tory bias, which was on display, had their tongue well and truly up their arse of the talk on Tories, I can tell you, in loving this fucking budget. Quicker jabs means more jobs protected. Yeah, I wouldn't deny that. Support for the self-employed, being through that. Extra £20 a week on universal credit continues. Yeah, but yes, but it's going to get taken away in September. Pay rises may bring a tax shock. The government pledged in its manifesto not to raise income tax, national insurance, and VAT. Yeah, that's true. Although income tax is not rising, the tax bill that people may face in future years could go up. At present, people start paying 20% income tax when they earn $12,500 a year. The starting point for paying the higher 40% income tax is $50,000, of course. These thresholds will go up to, right, okay, but then we'll be frozen for 5 years. I see what they're saying. Well, basically what they're saying is the rise, if there's a rise in wages. Now, essentially, before the pandemic, incomes hadn't risen in real terms for more than 10 years. Right? That's in real terms, okay? But if so, for instance, if people's wages do go up in relative terms, so someone, let's say, is getting, some cleaners getting paid £12,500, so that's £12,499. Okay, at the moment, right? They won't be paying any tax. Okay, but let's say in 5 years' time, their wages have crept up to more than 12,570 because of inflationary factors. I doubt their wages package would go up that much, but let's say it does. They would start paying income, the 20% rate of income tax. So that's what it's basically saying. Okay. As I say, creating another fucking housing bubble. That's what we all need, not. Saving green, Yeah, look, I mean, Caroline Lucas had a few things to say about this. She's the one Green MEP. Let's have a listen.
Caroline Lucas nails the biggest problem with Sunak's whatever it takes budget.
Rishi Sunak promised to do whatever it takes to support people and businesses when delivering his 2021 budget. However, our society is amid climate and biodiversity crises that threaten its very foundation. So what we really need is an economic plan that offers whatever it takes to support the planet and pull us back from the brink. In this, Sunak totally failed to deliver, as the Green Party's Caroline Lucas made perfectly clear.
Yeah, you see, the Tories, they like to talk green, but they don't actually fucking deliver. Oh yeah, and there's one other point I need to make before we go on as well. Sorry, I just mental note to myself.
Saying it doesn't make it true. As The Guardian reported ahead of the budget, many saw it as a vital test of Boris Johnson's green credentials. The government has repeatedly claimed to be creating a green industrial revolution. It also loves to describe itself as global leader on tackling climate change. So many people who care about whether the planet remains habitable, that should be everybody, were keen to see if the budget lived up to those grand claims. As Greenpeace's head of politics Rebecca Newsom said, "This budget is the government's opportunity to finally show it can walk the walk, and is willing to implement change as well as call for it." It didn't walk the walk. Indeed, The Guardian's roundup of the key points of the budget could only find 3 green announcements in it. Sunak announced that a green recovery bond will support green projects and that the government will reform the Bank of England's mandate to include net zero emissions targeting. The Chancellor also announced that it will set up a new national infrastructure bank in Leeds. As economic justice campaigner Richard Murphy pointed out, though, this wasn't quite the innovation Sunak painted it to be. Richard Murphy tweeted, "Sunak claims he is creating the first ever infrastructure bank, except we had one until the Tories sold it #budget."
You see, I told you that had been a previous. There was nothing fucking new about this fucking budget. That was the problem. It was the fucking regurgitating old fucking policies. Now, the point I wanted to make, I reminded myself. Sunak had said that they were going to employ more investigators into tax avoidance. Here's the thing: as well as talking tough, talking green, but doing fuck all, the Tories always say, "Oh, we're going to get tough on tax avoidance." And they never fucking do. Why? Because most of the people who back the Tories dabble in tax avoidance. Okay, that's who they are in the pocket. The Tories are in the pocket of the wealthiest and slightly most corrupt. Shall I just say that? So, anyways, I thought we'll go through Keir Starmer's response to the budget. As I say, he doesn't get everything wrong.
Worst economic crisis of any major economy in the last 12 months. Unemployment at 5%, and as the Chancellor said, forecast to rise to 6.5%. Debt at over 2 trillion. I'm sure this budget will look better on Instagram. In fact, this week's PR video cost...
Oh yeah, this is to do with Rishi Sunak's... He's fond of his social media. Basically, wasn't he? John McDonnell mentioned that he was one of the guests on Politics Live, and the only one who was speaking any fucking sense, by the way. Of course, he would. He was the Shadow Chancellor under Jeremy Corbyn, and well, we know that John McDonnell's a lifelong, socialist and good bloke all round. He said something about Rishi Sunak pictured himself wearing like a really expensive mohair hoodie, and he said, he's got a tin ear to, the man in the street and their struggles by doing this, and the Tory on the program just didn't get this. Well, how's he got a tin ear? By posing in some. What hoodie, does it really matter what hoodie he wears? Well, it does, because basically he's flaunting, his fucking wealth. He's being ostentatious, isn't he? And at a time, such as now, that's really bad fucking taste.
The taxpayer so much, I was half expecting to see a line in the OBR forecast for it. But even the Chancellor's film crew will struggle to put a positive spin on this. After the decisions of the last year and the decade of neglect, we needed a budget to fix the foundations.
Yeah, that was the other thing. The Tory, Rishi Sunak, right? He had the cheek to say, "Well, it's because of the decade of fiscal discipline that we're in better shape to deal with this crisis." No, we're not. because of the last 10 years of Tory austerity, the likes of the fucking NHS were ill-equipped to deal with the COVID crisis.
Of our economy, to reward our key workers, to protect the NHS, and to build a more secure and prosperous economy for the future. Instead, what we got was a budget that papered over the cracks rather than rebuilding the foundations. A budget that shows the government doesn't understand what went wrong in the last decade or what's needed in the next. The Chancellor may think that this is time for a victory lap, but I'm afraid this budget won't feel so good for the millions of key workers who are having their pay frozen, for the businesses swamped by debt, and the families paying more in council tax, and the millions of people who are out of work or worried about losing their job. And although the Chancellor spoke for almost an hour, we heard nothing about a long-term plan to fix social care. The Chancellor...
Now, this is one thing which Keir Starmer is actually right about. I've already mentioned it. There's been a crisis in social care funding. The Tories have just put their head in the sand about it. I will applaud Starmer when he gets things right, and he's right about this.
May have forgotten about it, but the Labour Party never will. The British people will rightly ask, why has Britain suffered a worse economic crisis than any major economy? The answer is staring us in the face. First, the Chancellor's decisions in the last year. This is the Chancellor who blocked a circuit break in September. Ignoring the science, he told the British people to live with coronavirus and live without fear. A few weeks later, we were forced into an even longer and more painful lockdown. Whatever spin the Chancellor tries to put on the figures today, as a result of his decisions, we've suffered deeper economic damage and much worse outcomes. And Madam Deputy Speaker, that is nothing compared with the decade of political choices that meant that Britain went into this crisis with an economy built on insecurity and inequality. The Chancellor...
Absolutely true. He's right again. As I said, I will applaud Starmer when he gets stuff right.
Referred to the last 10 years. We've got an economy as a result of those 10 years with 3.6 million people in insecure work, where wages stagnated for a decade. Over 4 million children living in poverty.
Yeah, child poverty, this is an eye-watering statistic. Child poverty has increased by 73% under the Tories. Let me repeat that. Child poverty has increased by 73% under the Tories.
And critically, we went into this crisis with 100,000 unfilled posts in the NHS and where social care was ignored and underfunded for a decade. Members opposite voted for all of that. Today's budget doesn't even recognise that, let alone rectify it. It's clear the Chancellor is now betting on a recovery fuelled by a consumer spending blitz. In fairness,
if he is... So consumer spending blitz means credit bubble. How did we get into the financial crisis? Oh yeah, it was a credit bubble. Banks were lending money to people who they shouldn't lend money to, right? So because they thought they had securitized basic. I could explain it. It gets all very complicated, but basically, there's a chain of securitization to banks loaning money, right? And they thought this was a foolproof method. Well, guess what? It wasn't. But basically, if there was a few people didn't, pay their their loans or their mortgages or their credit cards off, right? Credit default swaps and all that. I could bore you to tears, but I'm not going to. However, one thing I am going to explain is Marxian analysis of basically the global economy, and this is why Marx was right. When he was right about some other stuff as well, but he was definitely right about this. Basically, if you have a labour surplus, right, it pushes the prices of wages down, right? Thus, workers can't afford to buy the goods and services they're producing. Thus, usury, otherwise known as credit, comes into play in the economy, creating a bubble, and eventually that bubble will burst. In other words, Marx always said that capitalism would lurch from crisis to crisis. Okay? And he's right about that. Okay? So, onwards.
My next door neighbour was spending tens of thousands of
So,
pounds.
basically, sorry, the point I'm trying to make is that if the Tories are trying to cultivate another credit bubble, we will have another economic crisis. Okay?
Redecorating their flat, I'd probably do the same. But the central problem in our economy is a deep-rooted insecurity and inequality. And this budget isn't the answer to that. The Chancellor barely mentioned inequality, let alone tried to address it. So rather than the big transformative budget we needed, this budget simply papers over the cracks. If this had been a budget for the long term, it would have had a plan to protect our NHS, a plan to fix social care.
Yeah, talking about the NHS, right? Do you know that there are nurses who actually have to go to food banks? Yeah, all the talk about all the clap for carers and all that bullshit, clapping doesn't feed the fucking nurses. Higher wages does, and that's what we didn't hear. I'm sorry, I find it an absolute fucking disgrace, right? That fucking nurses, frontline workers putting their fucking lives on the line, to treat COVID fucking patients, right? Have to go to fucking food banks to, otherwise they will starve because the wages they get, are pitiful. It's out of fucking order.
And I can tell you this, the Labour budget would have had the NHS and care homes front and centre. But this budget is almost silent on those questions. If this had been a budget to rebuild the foundations, it would have fixed our broken social security system. Instead, the Chancellor has been dragged, kicking and screaming, to extend the £20 uplift in universal credit. But only for a few months. Once again, deferring the problem. As a result, insecurity...
I really do think that the Tories will actually be forced into keeping that £20 uplift permanently. Because as I say, I do see there being unrest, social unrest, if they decrease it. Yeah, I'm saying that people will possibly could riot because of it. I know you'll get Katie Hopkins, fucking scroungers, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Hey, and I know that the fucking conservative fucking media will put out say that, everybody on welfare just spends it on fucking booze and cigarettes. No, they don't actually. That's a fucking stereotype that obviously is a stereotype being spun by the fucking conservative media to basically help with the dismantlement of the fucking welfare state because they don't want to pay for it. Not realising actually that the welfare state is actually a good way of preventing there being a fucking bloody revolution in this country. I always refer back to the French Revolution. That what actually put basically made it happen is that 9/10 of the French population were living in abject poverty, while the 1 out of 10 were living in absolute opulence, right? When you have that amount of inequality, it leads to the breakdown of fucking society, okay? And basically, if you didn't have the fucking welfare state, you would have people, with fucking pitchforks, basically, at every fucking millionaire's mansion, okay? I'm just saying that. So, the welfare state actually helps protect, funny enough, the wealthy in society, as well as, making sure that the poorest don't, fucking die of starvation.
Security and the threat of losing £1,000 a year still hang over 6 million families. They ask what we'd do. What we would do, we would keep the uplift until a new, fairer system can be put in place. If this budget was serious about rebuilding our shattered economy, it would have included a credible plan to tackle unemployment. The Chancellor said very little about the Kickstart scheme. No doubt because the Prime Minister says rubbish. That's no doubt because the Kickstart scheme is only helping 1 in 100 eligible young people. Rubbish is the right word, Prime Minister. In 6 months, it supported just 2,000 young people. Yet youth unemployment is set to reach 1 million. Like so much of this budget, the Chancellor's offer is nowhere near the scale of the task. And of course, the biggest challenge this country is the climate emergency. The Chancellor just talked up his green credentials, but his budget stops way short of what was needed or what's happening in other countries. This budget should have included a major green stimulus, bringing forward billions of pounds of investment to create new jobs and new green infrastructure. Instead, the government is trying to build a new coal mine, which we now learn...
I have to laugh at the fact that the Tories are in favour of building a new coal mine. I mean, considering what they did to the miners of the 1980s. Oh, the irony. The irony's not lost on me. I mean, be fair, reliance on fossil fuels is not a good idea due to the environmental impact. But yet again, it shows up that the Tories are complete hypocrites when it comes to, going, about their green credentials, opening up a new fucking coal mine.
Might not even work for British Steel. If anything sums up this government's commitment to a green recovery and jobs for the future, it's building a coal mine we can't even use.
For fuck's sake. So they're opening a coal mine which isn't going to be able to be used. Oh, for fuck's sake. And yet they say, that money is wasted on disabled people.
If the government was serious about tackling insecurity and those most at risk from COVID, this budget would have fixed the broken system of statutory sick pay and, at the very least, filled the glaring holes in isolation payments. This isn't difficult to fix. The government should just make the £500 isolation payment available to everyone who needs it. That would be money well spent, and a year into the pandemic, it's a disgrace that it's not. If the government was serious about fixing the broken housing market, it would have announced plans for a new generation of genuinely affordable council houses. Instead...
Yeah, that's a good point. Yet again, Thomas right. I have to say, this wasn't a bad response. Yeah, we need affordable fucking housing. We don't need housing estates for fucking yuppies.
230,000 council homes have been lost since 2010. Yet
and let me tell you, the housing crisis has a devastating effect on society, in that it does basically, the likes at the far right will say, "Oh, it's the immigrants who are getting all the council getting themselves to the top of the housing, list. It's always the immigrants, basically using the housing crisis to basically push their racist agenda. Of course, it's not true that the immigrants are first in the queue for new housing. That's not fucking true. Okay, it's just like the Tories did in the 1990s, saying that young women got deliberately pregnant so that it got to the top of the housing list. You remember all that with John Redwood and all that far right wankers in the Tories? We need. I mean, look, the Green Party support a mass housing, mass building of affordable housing. The Green Party, okay? The Green Party don't generally, you kind of think the Green Party would be against, building, loads more, concrete, or brick, whatever various houses are made of, would be against urban sprawl, right? But here's the thing, right? They recognise that there is a fucking housing crisis and that we need to solve this because it leads to basically, a lot of people getting very angry and fucking fascists coming in and basically using those people's anger to push their fucking odious agenda.
Chancellor focused today.
Plus, also, as I said, you provide affordable housing to people. I know some people say, "Oh, it's a fucking handout." No, it's not. It's a hand up. You give people decent housing, and they could go on to do stuff, right? You give people the basics, and they, a lot of people will end up, making, decent contributions to society.
On returning to subsidising 95% of mortgages. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've heard that somewhere before. Maybe it was because the Prime Minister announced it 5 months ago in his conference speech. No, I don't think anybody heard that. I remember now, it's what Osborne and Cameron came up with in 2013. And what did that do? It fueled a housing bubble, it pushed up prices, and made owning a home more difficult. So much for Generation Buy. I've been saying for weeks that this budget will go back. I didn't expect the Chancellor to lift a failed policy from 8 years ago. This budget fell far short of the transformative change we needed to turbocharge our recovery for the decades to come. There was no credible plan to ease the burden of debt hanging over so many businesses. This is estimated at £70 billion. This budget asks businesses to start paying that money back, whether they're profitable or not.
Right, and that's a problem, because if they're not profitable, they're not going to be able to pay it back.
That affects millions of businesses. It will hold back growth, because businesses will have to pay back money they never wanted to borrow, instead of being able to invest in their futures and create jobs in their
Good observation from Keir Starmer, that.
Local areas. It's both unfair and economically illiterate. This budget also fell far short of what was needed to support the self-employed and freelancers, unless, of course, you're one of the Chancellor's photographers. After a year of inaction, we'll look at the details of what the Chancellor announced. But it certainly looks like, from the figure of 600,000 that he mentioned, that millions will still be left out in the cold. The Chancellor's one nominally long-term policy was his references to levelling up. But what does that actually look like? It's not the transformative shift in power, wealth and resources we need to rebalance our economy.
Right, to explain, because I didn't do this earlier, stupid me. Levelling up basically is the Tories sort of saying that the northern cities have their infrastructure, blah de blah, isn't as good as say places like London, right? Which is true, okay, and basically they want to invest in those cities so that basically so that we have a far more decentralized economy, okay, which wouldn't be a bad thing, I'd say, but okay, it's all fucking talk, and it's all fucking talk, right? Because the Tories are talking talking the talk rather than walking the walk. Because obviously, at the last general election, they won a whole load of seats. They broke the red wall, as it was called. There was that red wall which went from where was it, Hull to Liverpool, which was just Labour constituencies, and they broke it. Because they won those seats, they're going to have to sort of say, oh yeah, we're going to invest in the northern communities and whatever else, levelling up, blah 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 blah. Whether it actually fucking happens, I don't know. And to be honest, though I don't think, Labour will win back all those seats. I think they will win back some, possibly, depending on Keir Starmer's performance. I mean, as I say, today he sounded better. I'll have to give him that. The thing is that a lot of people voted Conservative up north because they wanted to get Brexit done. I mean, remember the Tory mantra all through that general election campaign: get Brexit done, get Brexit done. And basically, they lent the Tories. A lot of people up north said, "I'm lending the Tories my vote to get Brexit done," because everybody was Brexit wary. I mean, we were all fucking, weary. Sorry, we were all fucking knackered from fucking Brexit. Just get it over and done with. I think a lot of people felt. I still think Brexit's a really dumb idea, and I think that this country in the long term will be far fucking poorer from it. But, people wanted it to happen. People wanted Brexit. Anyways.
It's not the bold, long-term plan we need to upskill our economy, to tackle educational attainment, or to raise life expectancy. It certainly isn't a plan to focus government resources on preventative services and early years. For the Chancellor, levelling up seems to mean moving some parts of the Treasury to Darlington, creating a few free ports, and re-announcing funding. That isn't levelling up, it's giving up. And instead of putting blind faith in free ports, the Chancellor would be better served making sure that government's Brexit deal actually works for Britain's manufacturers, who now face more red tape when they were promised less, for our financial services, still waiting for the Chancellor to make good on his promises, for the small businesses and fishing communities whose goods and produce are now left unsold in warehouses.
Yeah, fishermen have been hit the hardest, but fishermen, the fishing industry has struggled for many decades. All you have to do is watch the first series of any series Rick Stein does on fish. That's a joke, a bit of a joke. Basically, there was a guy I used to know, Phil, and he said, "I can't watch Rick Stein. He just goes on about the plight of the fishermen all the fucking time." Well, fishermen, let's just say some EU regulations did not help fishermen. I'd always say people should check out Hugh Fern Whittingstall's series on that. It was a few years ago now, but basically, you keep hearing these stories about fishermen who voted for Brexit and now finding out that actually the extra red tape they're having to deal with is actually basically fucking up their business even more than it was already fucked up.
And for our artists and performers who just want to be able to tour. Turning to other parts of the statement, we'll wait for the detail about the so-called super deduction, but it's unlikely to make up for the 10 years when the levels of private investment growth have trailed so many other countries. Of course, we welcome the creation of the National Infrastructure Bank, something we've called for years. Although it'd been better if the government hadn't sold off the Green Investment Bank.
See, told you I remember that. Yeah, the Green Investment Bank, they sold it off. Yeah. So it was a proposal made by the Liberal Democrats while in coalition government, and it was a decent proposal. Yeah, I'm not saying the Liberal Democrats are always full of shit. Sometimes they do propose some good stuff. And I mean, at the moment they're going on about UBI. I can't help thinking, though, the cynic in me kind of thinks that the Liberal Democrats are doing that to attract younger voters back after basically fucking them over tuition fees. Yeah. The Tories, are basically regurgitating yet another policy that they put into place, some years ago, then scrapped. They've got no new ideas, have they?
In the first place, we also welcome the introduction of green saving bonds. I have to say, what a good idea it is to introduce a new set of recovery bonds.
Here's the problem with the whole recovery bond bullshit. People aren't going to be able to afford to fucking buy them. Okay?
The trouble is that the scale of what the Chancellor announced today is nowhere near ambitious enough. And the long overdue commitments to extend furlough, business rate relief, and the VAT cut on hospitality are welcome. But there is no excuse for holding the announcement of this support back until today. And of course, we'll look at the detail. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are very few silver linings in this budget. The IMF and the OECD have said now isn't the time for tax rises.
Right, now this is where Keir Starmer gets it wrong. Yes, it is. The likes of Amazon and the supermarkets have done very well from this national crisis, and I kind of think, global crisis. I kind of think that they should be taxed for basically taking the piss, because Amazon do. And I can't help thinking that the reason why Starmer is opposing corporation tax is that the rise in corporation tax is because this was a headline policy of Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party. And everything all the big policies that Jeremy Corbyn had, Keir Starmer's anti them. He's anti, he basically wants to put as much water between himself and Jeremy Corbyn as he can. And this is one way of him doing it. I'm also wondering whether, my suspicions are right. I was reading something the other day that whether Starmer actually consulted the focus group full of Karens from Tunbridge Wells about his response, because we seem to have gone back to the focus group type formulation of Labour policy that we had with the Blair Labour Party under Blair. The thing is, with the whole focus group thing is it's actually inaccurate as to what people really want, right? I'm just going to say it is. It's not. It's not. And I just think that, Labour should stick to its core values, which is, social justice and equality.
We're in the middle of a once-in-300-year crisis. Our economy is still shut. Our businesses are on life support. So it's right that corporation tax isn't rising this year or next. Of course, in the long run, corporation tax should go up.
Oh, well, he says in the long term. In other words, Starmer's kicking the football into the grass. Well, he's kicking it into the grass, isn't he?
The decade-long corporation tax experiment by this government has failed. But no taxes should have been raised in the teeth of this economic crisis. So it's
well, not on those, companies which, as I said, the likes of Amazon. As I said, I think that Rishi Sunak missed an opportunity today with the windfall tax. With a windfall tax on those corporations who have done quite nicely from the COVID pandemic. All right? I'm surprised that Keir Starmer hasn't, this was, Gordon Brown had a windfall tax on, I remember the windfall tax, the Blair, Gordon Brown, and Chancellor of the Exchequer under Tony Blair, announced on the privatised utilities to fund. I forgot which program it was. Right? Why it is that Starmer doesn't? The thing is, if he's opposing tax rises, that actually puts him. Well, it puts him definitely to the right of Joe Biden, because Biden does believe in tax rises.
So it's extraordinary that the Chancellor is ploughing ahead with a £2 billion council tax rise affecting households.
Right, okay, now there's one. Right, the council tax rise. Okay. The thing is, right, sure, that's going to hit ordinary people rather than the rich. Okay, so I kind of think that maybe we should take that into consideration on when it comes to that particular tax. Having said that, if the council tax rise enables local authorities to provide better services, then so be it.
Households across the country.
In other words, if people get something for the money, then isn't that a good thing?
So why is he doing that? Why is he doing that when every economist would tell him not to do it? Perhaps we find the answer in this week's Sunday Times. Rishi's argument, let's do all this now, far away from the election as possible. Or the Telegraph on the 27th of January. Raising taxes now means that they can be reduced ahead of the next election. Sunak tells MPs.
Oh, that's a very cynical ploy, isn't it? Yeah, hoping that people have short-term memories. So that's basically Starmer. Now, most of it I did actually agree with. I think he's wrong about opposing the corporation tax rise. I know that he said in the long term, but like that, as I said, that's just kicking into the grass. I think that there should be a rise in corporation tax. As I said, Biden seems to want to proceed with it in the United States. Anyways, one thing I saw today, talking of Brexit, because people forget that Brexit's also affecting the economy. I saw this. In my village, actually I have to do this in the Gammon voice. In my village, there's an English school, an English doctor, an English shop, and an English dentist, and an English church, and an English pub. Since the Chinese since the Chinese takeaway was driven out, the population is now 95% English. This is a tangible Brexit benefit, keeping everything for the English. Don't tell me that Brexit wasn't motivated by racism, because it fucking was. It certainly wasn't motivated by economic interest, the economic self-interest of ordinary people, because if people realised how much it's going to make them poorer, they wouldn't have fucking voted for it. They were blinded by the little fucking Adolf inside them who's really fucking racist. Anyways, if Labour do vote against the corporation tax rise, there will be Labour MPs rebelling. Trickett, Beckett, Lavery, Unite Against Labour, HQ briefing against Left MPs saying that they'll vote for taxi. Against Labour HQ briefing against Left MPs for saying they'll vote for tax increases on the wealthy. I'd imagine that Jeremy Corbyn would also rebel as well, considering that this the hike in corporation tax was something which, as I've mentioned several times now, that Labour, that John McDonnell, his shadow chancellor, had proposed. So, yeah, I think that Starmer's repositioning of the Labour Party is not going down well. I mean, Margaret Beckett is hardly, the most sort of rebellious MP, is she? And yet she, is prepared to rebel against the Labour leadership when it comes to opposing corporation, with them wanting to oppose corporation tax and the hiking corporation tax. I mean, yeah. So the Richard Bergen obviously would be another left-wing Labour MP who would vote for increase in the corporation tax, rebelling against the Labour leadership. I think that Starmer really needs to start listening to the Labour membership and not just the rights of the Parliament of the Labour Parliamentary Party, because I really do think that he's getting, he's just getting it wrong. You see, here's the danger, right? I said that Labour might win back seats which they lost, the supposed, red wall, in that, in the red wall. Depends if the Tories, of course, try and, they have proposed gerrymandering constituency boundaries. They want to reduce the number of MPs from 650 down to 600, and that would mean that it would be harder for Labour to win any election. But even if they don't proceed with that, right, Nick? Okay. Here's the danger for Starmer moving the Labour Party to the right. Okay, there will be old type Labour voters in those northern constituencies, and if Starmer positions the Labour Party to the right, then they're not going to be asked to go out and vote for Labour, and Labour could actually lose more fucking seats. That's the danger. As I say, Starmer really needs to get a grip, okay? I'll admit to a certain degree that one of the problems is that a lot of stuff when it comes to the Labour Party, it does come through the prism of the Tory press, but even the left-wing press are basically, questioning Starmer. Anyways, one final thing. If you want to get us out of the mess we're in, high time Labour about legal cannabis. I wouldn't see Starmer going for this. Jeremy Corbyn was prepared to. He was prepared, he said that he supported the decriminalisation of marijuana. The thing is, right, the government, talks about, fixing the public finances. Well, marijuana is a cash crop, right? And the governments can't afford the war on drugs. Right? They just can't. Basically the war on drugs is actually fucking counterproductive, right? I'll just give you one example here. Okay, this is actually not to do with marijuana, but it's actually to do with heroin. So before so when the Taliban were in charge of Afghanistan, poppy heroin being smuggled out of Afghanistan was dropped to near non-existent, right? As soon as NATO invaded Afghanistan and occupied it, well then, shall we say, the poppy harvests shot up. And basically, because the Taliban were prepared to use it to basically fund their, odious terrorist activities. Now, because heroin is illegal, right, it has an inflated price. Okay? I told you everything's economics. If you legalised heroin, right, or at least, shall we say, I've always said that heroin should be available on prescription. And I know Terry the Troll would go, I don't want to be paying for, the heroin addicts to get free heroin, on the NHS. Well, you already pay for it in your, premiums on your fucking house insurance because, crime is partly motivated by people being dependent on various substances, including those which are legal, funny enough. And basically, if you legalized drugs, it would basically reduce the amount of people who are in prison. Thus, there wouldn't be, as much money for, your taxes would come down, basically. Okay. Now, so one thing though, now granted, that's a controversial thing to legalize a Class A substance, right? But marijuana, right? I have smoked marijuana since I was a teenager, and I carry on doing so, and I am an habitual pothead, and I'll fucking admit it, right? The thing is, right, marijuana, here's the amount of people who have been killed by marijuana. Drum roll, 0, okay? I've always said, you don't see criminal gangs having turf wars over cough syrup, do you? Why? Because cough syrup is legally available. Now, some people say, oh, you're being silly. Well, actually, no. Let me tell you this little story, right? So I used to score from this guy called Alan. I used to score a guy called Alan. I used to score my ganja from him. And of all the drugs Alan was addicted to, he was addicted to Benylin. Yeah, don't laugh. Yeah, that's right. He used to drink 2 bottles a day. And I remember I used to get a discount on the price of marijuana if I would have got, because he was banned from the local pharmacies, right? So basically, me and Owen, and I always remember Alan, because if you've ever seen the film Whitnell and I, do you remember, if you've seen it, you'll remember the drug dealer, you know, in it. Yeah, I'll do you some damage. Remember that? Yeah. Well, he looked exactly like him, right? Me and Owen used to go and basically get him his Benylin, right? And then they started asking us, you know, basically the pharmacist said, we're in here quite a lot buying Benylin, you know. So I had to find other sources for my marijuana, shall we say. And I eventually did. I actually was scoring directly from a grow up, which is the best way to score, I'd have to say. Because you basically know you're getting quality. But anyways, you know, after a while, basically, you know, like you get Oz Clarke and, you know, being a connoisseur of wine. Though I think some people would just say he's a drunk. Well, anyways, you know, Gilly Gordon and Oz Clarke from Food and Drink, you know, wine connoisseurs. Well, you get a bit like that with marijuana after a while. You get to know different strains and you know, basically. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is cough syrup is addictive, right? But because it's legally available, you don't have gang warfare over you know, who gets to deal on what territory, right? Have we not learned anything from prohibition in the United States, right? Basically, if a market is not able to regulate itself legally, then the criminal factor will step in and do it. Yeah, you know, you make a drug legal, you create gangsters. Okay, that's what you do, right? And it's really fucking stupid, you know, and it's a waste of money and resources. You know, that's what I say. You know, legalize drugs. In what, I'm not saying that, you know, you should be able to go into fucking Boots and get a fucking needle and you know, and some heroin. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. Okay, you know, there would be, you know, you would have to have some sort of means of regulating it, right? But the thing is, marijuana particularly would be a fucking cash crop. You should fucking tax that. Fuck it, the national debt would be gone over fucking night. You know? Yeah. There you are. So. Anyways, I will be back tomorrow with Ozma, covering stories which we didn't manage to cover yesterday. There was a whole load of stories, including when Gun Girl met Jewish laser woman. Yes, that's right. There is a video of Caitlin Bennett talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I need to react to. It was only a amount of time before I got around to Caitlin fucking Bennett, wasn't it? That's going to be fun. Anyways, I will be, as I say, I'll be back tomorrow with Osma. In the meantime, if you like this video, give it a like. Share it with your friends. I'll be honest, I am a little annoyed. I've not seen a single one of my Facebook friends share any of my videos yet. I mean, you know, and I know it's a sad thing to admit. I've got quite a few Facebook friends. I mean, look, you know, I'm not going to hold it against them. You know, people, you know, are friends in many different ways to you. Anyways, if you got any feedback, then drop us a comment down below. And most importantly of all, please subscribe to this channel. It would really, really help me. Anyways, in the meantime, stay safe and peace out.